Hey, Peter. All right, Jacob, Richard, good to see you.
Hey, Mark.
Hey. All right.
Hey, Cora. Long time.
Yeah, how are you?
Doing great. Doing great. How are you?
Good. I'm glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. Yeah, I'm doing good. I just have a new foster dog, so we'll see if we
Oh, cool.
stop him from, he's got like horrendous snoring, man. I'm gonna try to put my AirPods in. You guys let me know if it sounds crazy because Mark earlier, so
We were on a call earlier and her AirPods were just like making a crazy sound.
That's intentional. Apple's trying to get you to upgrade.
It's the upgrade problem for sure.
Sneaky. They get me every time. All right, cool. Hopefully that works. And then Mark, okay, it looks like it's recording. I hope I set it to
Yeah.
record in the cloud so we don't have to have that.
I hope so too.
issue. Hi, Peter. It's nice to see you. Or to say hello via chat.
Hey Cora, hey Mark, hey guys.
Hey there.
I actually can't hear you anymore, but I think that's because my AirPod just died.
Oh, gotta get the pros. Telling you, it's a big difference. Hey, Shay.
All right, so let's see. Awesome, Shay's in the call. Milton, hey Milton, with Jacob.
Shay, you have so many good pictures. Like I'm in, I think we're in 100 Days of No Code together too. You've got a good profile picture in there. Your Twitter picture is nice. All the pictures I see of you are like really well done.
Well, she's
Like
a
mine, they just
photographer.
makes total sense.
It'd be nice to have some headshots of our team sometime.
Yeah, we need to do that. It's been a while. Kevin, how are you?
Doing good, thank you.
Hello.
All right, I'll give a few more minutes and then we'll go ahead and jump in. It's interesting. We have, last time, I think we need to keep a better eye on the participant list, or maybe just to open it up for the next one, because last time, like, I think Ken was sitting there waiting for like 15 minutes or something. Yeah.
Not Ken. Ken's VIP, man.
Right.
Hello. Hi,
Hey,
Dennis.
Dennis.
Hey, what's up?
Nice to see you.
Looks like we
Thanks,
got
Richard, for bringing
Robert.
Dennis in.
And
No problem. He's gonna make some cool stuff. He just got access to GPT-3 as well. So
Oh,
Guys,
nice.
keep an eye on this guy.
I need some
Watching
GPT-3
you.
access. How do you pass that over? Can you? I didn't actually apply for it. I need to like request it, I guess, before.
I think that's the first step,
Yeah. I haven't asked anybody.
we can weasel Mark in somehow. Come on.
hey, Robert.
All right.
Just disclaimer, you're gonna hear some horrible snoring in the background. I just got a new foster dog. So I might mute myself unless I'm talking.
It's funny. It's like a low rumble, like, roar.
Can you hear it?
I feel like it would be better if you didn't tell us it's a dog.
Right.
Oh, you just thought I was like inconspicuously farting the whole time? No, thank you. I'm gonna qualify this one.
Everybody looks to see who's not muted, What's
Yeah.
that?
When he wakes
Right.
up, I'll have to show him. Looks like Jeremy's multitasking. Totally
No worries.
respect that. Hey, Eric, welcome. I'm gonna try these one more time. Let's see if they.
Good luck.
Maybe if I use both at the same time.
There we go. That sounds good.
Yeah, okay.
That could be it. My old one's the left one dies after like a minute. So I had to break down and get the new ones.
Yeah, same issue.
By design.
Yeah, I think it's by
That was
design,
right when the
but
new ones came out. Like legit. I was like, all right, I get it.
They just go, all right, kill these.
I can't, it can't be coincidence, right? I mean, there's just every person I know who uses Apple products says the same exact thing. So it's
Yeah.
gotta be real.
Yeah.
But
It's convenient
I
that
fe-
my hard drive doesn't fit the next OS, so I have to upgrade my new to a new computer now.
I do feel like at this point though, someone would have found it in like the kernel, right? Like some really
Yes.
good hacker would have found it at this point. But, all right, I think we can probably jump in. I'll just let people in as they come from here on out.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for being here. Last Builder Hour was super fun, so I hope y'all brought some good questions today. So I'll just kind of go over what we'll cover, kind of just quick agenda. So Mark is actually going to do a demo of the founder update, and he'll tell us a little bit about why he built that, and then take us through his build of it. And then I want to talk about some feedback that we got from some of the, some of you guys who have been in there in the last few weeks, and kind of what we heard about what we needed to change, the good, the bad, the ugly. And then Mark's going to go through a couple of things about what we found with latency, and then also he's going to show y'all the new UI. Which is super different, but like vastly improved. So I'm really excited about that. And then we'll do like a Q&A at the end. And then of course, you guys are welcome if you have any questions as we're going through anything to just chat them or just unmute yourself and ask, and then we'll answer as we go. All right, Mark, are you geared up to show the founder update?
Yeah, let me show my screen. I'm seeing, Corey, you're an admin on this meeting, right? You can let people in too.
I don't.
Just
yeah, maybe so.
just double check, because when I'm demoing, I won't be able to see. That's the only reason I was thinking.
I don't think I can. I think I'm set to be like a co-host.
Should be allowing you, but that's okay. I think there's someone named Steve. It looks like that I clicked the button on, but it's not letting them in. So we'll see. It's all right.
Okay. You know what I'll do is maybe I'm gonna go change the settings in Zoom real quick and just do like auto allow, and hopefully it'll let them in. We'll see.
There you go. Cool. All right, so I'll show my screen. Let's see. So this is the landing page for Founder Update. Everybody can see that, right? You guys all see it? Cool. So as a founder of a couple of different companies that has investors and team, I'm always having to keep people up to date every month of like what's going on, and what did we do last month, and sometimes plans, but primarily it's looking backward. I've learned a long time ago, like, don't make promises going for the go forward with a startup, because things change so rapidly. So it's usually a look back at the last month. And I've used different apps to do it. Obviously, I've used email to do it. There's tons of different methods, but I wanted to build a little app for myself to do it this time. Part of that is just I love building things, so I wanted to do that. But also, there's some specific things that can make it easier. Like I wanted to be able to have templates where I could just start from something else. I wanted to be able to duplicate my previous update and then just modify it. I wanted to be able to have lists of recipients. And then what I really want to add in also that's not in here yet is the ability for people that get that it gets sent out to be able to do emoji reactions to specific things on the page, and also comments on a section by section basis. So there can actually be some interaction and some back and forth going on. It's one thing I've noticed over the years is that, engagement with investors in particular, with your team, you're working with them all the time. But with investors, you really don't communicate with them unless you need something, or unless something's wrong or something's right. Like, it's like these very specific points where you're actually communicating. And I always thought it would be cool to have a better way to interact. So that was part of the reason here. So it's a really straightforward product. There's really not much to it. I sort of mimicked it off of Notion, and I just went and looked at the UI. I was just like, I'll just do that as a starting point. So you can sign up for it. It's on a wait list right now. I'll be opening it up in a couple of weeks. Got a few bugs in it I need to work out before then, but I'll go into it here. This is the UI on the inside. So right now I've got a draft here called February update, and I can do things like, my heading would be something like, the best month ever, or something like that, whatever it is, maybe do like, I guess it would be rocket, like that, put whatever little emoji you want in there, whatever it is. And then you add headings, paragraphs, links, and images in. And I did this pretty quick in Bildr. There's really not much to it. You just type out your text, whatever you want to be in here, add images in, and you can drag and drop these rows. So you can like pick these up and move them around, and they'll just rearrange. And I can show you how I did that in Bildr if you guys are interested in that. So you click here to upload the image. And again, I basically just went to Notion and was like, how do they style these things? So if you use Notion, you'll see that like this upload an image row is very similar to what they do. The little dots here is very similar to what they do. And even like the styling on the buttons, and obviously the header, all those kind of things. Over time, usually whenever I build a product like this, I'll start off with something that's very similar to something else that I like or that I enjoy using, but then it'll just change over time based on the reality of whatever the product is. So like, for instance, I'm already thinking that I probably don't want a header like this. And instead, I just want to allow you to create full width sections and put color on them. And so I'll end up swapping this out for something totally different over time. But it's usually good practice for me to start off with something that I already know, so I'm not spending a ton of time trying to make the design perfect as I'm trying to build out the UI and logic as well. So a couple things you can do in here. I can click preview, and this will give me a preview of that particular update. And I can go in and do things like, change the color of whatever it is, and that'll update on this over here. You can change the text color. I'll end up adding the ability to do that in here as well, so you can actually change out the colors as you go down. So it's more like almost like a blog. But yeah, so that's pretty much it for the build of it. And then you have what are called recipient groups. So you create a recipient group, and you have a from name and a from email. So this would be like my name, and then whatever my email address is that I want the reply to be, and what it's going to show up as. So I'm sending this email from update@founderupdate.com to whoever your recipients are. And then the reply to will be whatever you put in here. So it would be like, if it was for my cycles thing, it would be marketcycles.so, or if I'm doing this for Bildr, it'd be marketbuilder.com. And so now anything that returns, or anybody who replies to that, it's going to come back to me. And then recipients, I would do like, we'll put Drew in here, and Drew@google.com. Let's go with that. And you can see I'm doing little things like I'm checking to see if it's valid or not, and it automatically adds that. And then if you've got the valid recipients, you can see them here. You can also make this private or public. So if you make it public, then it's just accessible. If you make it private, it'll only be accessible to those people. I'm going to make this, I didn't name the group, but I would name the group. So that would be like, I would have a recipient group called investors, another called team, another called maybe potential investors, another called friends of the company or something along those lines. So that way I can send these out. So like for the Bildr updates, I actually send them to the team. We send them, like my wife gets the update, I just kind of send them out. I'm not very shy about the inner workings of it if you're a part of the company, right? And then on the send process, you can see what you get here. So my from name, I'll put Mark here, and then the subject line would be February update. And then this is like a brief message. So this would be, typically it's going to match whatever like your first paragraph is. So it might, say the best month ever. And then the button text. So basically what this does is when you send it, it creates an email with that message, with that subject, and puts a button at the bottom with that text on it. Oh, and it looks like there's a couple people waiting. Let them in. There we go. And then when they click the button, it actually takes them to this same view. But what's cool about it is instead of just updating or just sending it and that's it, when they click on it and they come back in here, it'll actually log it. And I'm not going to do it here because I don't have real email addresses in here, but it actually logs it with their unique ID that they viewed it and when they viewed it, where they were when they viewed it, that kind of stuff. So I can actually see like who actually went in there in a timely fashion, which is important. For instance, like if you're fundraising or something, you can see who's like engaging with your updates and who's actually going in there and taking a look. So that's the basic gist of the project or product. There's quite a few things under the hood too. And then this is what that looks like in the studio. So these are all the pages. This is the home page with the early access form, the login page. This is what happens when you're validating a magic link for sign in. And then we have the app page here. So if I'll zoom in here so we can see it. So this is that app page that matches up to what we saw on the actual running app. And then this is the entry edit page and so forth. So these are all those little menus and things that pop up. So yeah, the structure is pretty straightforward in here. There is, let me go back to Zoom to Fit. So the structure is basically you have the app page, which has the lists on the left. I can zoom in a little bit too, which has the lists on the left. And then that when you click it, it opens this entry edit page into this panel on the right. So whenever I'm in here and I click on this, that opens that entry update over here on the right. So that's kind of the general gist of it. I like open a page there, and then there's other things that load within it. So that's Founder Update. I can go into any level of detail you guys want to. Is there anything in particular, any specific things that are of interest to see, like maybe sending the emails or all kinds of things? I've got account details in here, all kinds of stuff. Oh, and I see there's some chats. Oh, just hi. Hi, Steve. Yeah, any questions or anything? I mean, I can dive into whatever you guys would like, or we can just talk about new UI stuff. This is in the new UI here, what we're looking at. It's like left and right panels are a little different. What's up, Richard?
Can you show us how you did the real-time validation on the email?
What do you mean by validation? Which part?
You type the email address, check, or the X.
And there's a little check
Oh,
there.
yeah. Let's see. Where is that one? Here, I think it's right here. So what I do, so this is the email row. This is that little recipient row. So we go back into the UI. That's this row. So you'll see the left side and the right side. So if I add another one, this is a grid and there's a set of rows in there. So I'm actually creating records, a set of entities for their like children to the recipient group. So that's the first step. And then on the edit of this, if I look at the email button on the events, let me move the video out of the way. Let's see. So let me grab it. Weird. So there's this key up event that runs an action where I'm checking to see if it's a valid email. So it just looks, it takes the first argument is what is the value in the email address? And there's an option in the operator called validate. And you literally just have to type email in and the conditional statement does the work for you where it checks to see if it's a valid email. And then if it's true, I do one thing. And if it's false, I do another thing. So if it's true, then I go in and add a class where I'm actually setting the check to hidden, or I remove that. Sorry, I remove the hidden class and then I add the hidden class to the exclamation. So I have two little, they're both hidden by default, but there's these icons here that are the check and the exclamation point. So I just went and found some nice icons and just used those. And then basically all I'm doing is setting these things to either have this visibility hidden or not. So if I zoom in on that, you can kind of see it in the UI. So there's the check. And if I put visibility hidden back on here, it'll hide it, right? So all I'm doing is swapping that out based on that validation. And I run that on form load too, on page load. So whenever it first runs, if I go here, it's gonna do whether it's valid or not. So I run that same conditional statement. So when you go back in, it's doing the check. I actually use that also. I do a, when, let's see, I thought it was, maybe it's in the save, one sec. There was something else I do, I thought, on the change. Yeah, so I actually do go a little further with it too. In addition to just the check, I do another conditional statement to see if it's valid. And if it is, then I do an update of the count where I actually have a count of valid emails on the recipient group, because I use that in the UI later where I just display like there's, you know, this has 4 people, this has 5 people, but I only want to show the number of people with valid emails, not everyone. I was thinking about a way in here to do like a subscription to this, because I think it'd be cool to like, here's Mark's updates for Bildr, and just let, like if I made it public, just let people subscribe to the updates, and then I just automatically email them. And I'll eventually do that. That's a little more complex because right now the way that these are sending out is they send them one by one. So when you go in and say, I want to send, it sends those out one at a time from that page that I'm on. So it's not like a timed thing. It's not scheduled, none of that. So if I'm going to go down that path, I would need to make it a scheduled thing, because you're not going to click there 1,000 times, you know? But I'm assuming right now in terms of the product, it's basically like, you're not going to have more than maybe 20 or 30 total people you want to send this to. So it's okay to, you know, click it 20 times or something. There is a button at the bottom, you can send it all, but there's something about, for me, when I go and send it, like I want to click like, send to Drew, send to Bob, you know, and just like see it. Yep, success. And I actually did put on there too, I think it's over here. Let me zoom back out. It's funny, I don't know. Yeah, it's in here. Oh, it's all hidden by default, I forgot. But in here, I actually do a sent date and a number of views count. So it counts how many times the thing has been viewed. And it shows the last time it was sent, so that you never have to like guess at when did I send that and did I resend it. I actually had to do that on the last update. There were a couple people who, I think it went to spam because it was coming from update at founder update, and they probably had like it blocking it. I think one of them was actually using a Hey account. And so they like, it was in there, you know, the list of like, I have to allow this. So I ended up resending those. So yeah, what else? Any other questions on here? It's a simple app, but there's actually quite a bit of depth inside of this thing.
Is it built
Right.
in? Is that validation built in? That's what it looks like to me. Am I
Yeah.
missing something? Okay.
Yeah, the validation is, there's an action type that's just called condition. So when you hit add action and you get this list of all the actions, if you type condition, there's this one called compare values. And that has an operator in here called validate. So if you type email into here, just literally the text email, whatever, it's going to check whatever your test value is to validate whether or not it's a valid email, just automatically.
Okay, how do
So
I
just-
know that?
Yeah, that we're working
I mean,
on
that wouldn't be
side of it.
obvious to me that I just type
Totally.
in email. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, we're working on all that stuff, and I'll show you in a minute what we're doing for that actually.
And like for some context too, when I first started in Bildr, there were little things like that all over. But I've been watching as we've slowly been adding an interface around it, slowly been adding a little help tooltip. So, you know, that's just something that hasn't been addressed yet, but at some point that'll be intuitive and you'll be able to see exactly how it works in the UI.
Yeah, there's a bunch of
If there was
places
a little
like that.
question mark with a hover, and it gave you the
Exactly.
list of all the possible ones, and all those were linked, hyperlinked to some kind of help page, it would describe them more thoroughly. That could be helpful.
That's exactly what we're doing. So we're actually going through the UI right now and adding all these things. little question marks in different places. And then those are also rolling into a broader Bildr lessons and help area, where from there, if there's something more detailed, some of these things like just this little question mark is really all you need. But then other things, you actually need to link out to those things. So we're integrating all of that right now. We're building out all those lessons right now. So over the next, this next release we're doing in a week or so, we'll have a big set of that. And then there's going to be another, every release will add more and more and more like that.
Okay. That's
Yeah,
good.
so the power and the functionality of Bildr is there. What we're trying to catch up on is like the education and the onboarding. Like what is helpful for you guys to see, what's actually going to get you over that hump of understanding, like all the things that you can do and how do you do them. It's an incredibly complex tool. So that's what we're trying to solve for right now. So Mark showed you a little bit about the kind of like built-in learning that we're working on. And so we'll try to do lessons and then we'll need help from y'all as well. So if there's something in specific that you're trying to learn how to do and you're not sure what that is, like make a post in the community and then like we'll answer your question there. But then that'll also indicate to us like, oh, hey, this is something that like we might need to make a video for and add a lesson for in the studio. And then like over time, we'll have a lot of that educational content. So that's definitely something that we're trying to work on. So if you guys have any like questions like that or even any suggestions, like we're happy to take that into account. So definitely let us know. So that kind of leads me. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Mark.
I wanted to answer a couple of the questions that were in the chat real quick because they were part of what's in here.
Just type in one, but you can answer.
So
nice. Yeah, for the reorder, because I have the drag and drop in here. I can show you how I did that. Let me. The video gets in my way. There. Let me just move it. It's weird. The Zoom video is like not letting me move it around easily.
I think it only lets you lock it to certain places.
I see. So let's see. So on the drag and drop, mine's a little more detailed and I like have things hidden by default. So it's a little hard to see this. So let me see if I can, let's see. I don't remember how I have this hidden. So I have all this stuff hidden here. So like in here, if I go to the update and you have this is the drag icon that I have here. And when I pick it up, you can see it like grabs that image. So the way that I did that, I have this, this is that same page. And I have the little triangle here. I'm sorry, not the triangle. Let's see, I'm trying to remember what it was that I actually dragged that on. Oh, it's here, the drag outer. So on an element, you have, if you add an event to an element and you just type drag, you have a set of drag events that you can do. So in this case, I'm using drag start, and on drag start, I'm doing a certain thing. So you can get more detailed with it. Like I'll show you how I did the drag image. There's options for doing drag image, but on the basic gist of it is on drag start, what you want to do is say, I'm dragging this thing, right? Like you need to tell the system like what you're dragging. And then whenever you drop it, you need to also say what you're doing. So on drop, it's going to do something different. So in the case of what I'm doing here, I'm actually dragging this little guy, the little tiny thing, but I'm dropping on the whole outer row of it, right? So like the entire row is a droppable container. And so I have on the outer container an event for on drop, and on that little part that I want to be able to allow the user to drag, I have a drag event for saying when the drag starts, do this. So when the drag starts, what I'm doing is setting a variable that says this is the one I'm dragging. And then on drop, I do a series of things. But the main thing is there's an action. When you do a search, if you look for, I mean, you can actually just see it here. There's like moving a specific row. You're moving a row in a grid. But this grid, the grid actions are very, very powerful. So in essence, in Bildr, almost everything that you see that's a list of things is going to be what we call a grid. So there's an element called grid, and these are all the actions that pertain to that grid type element. So you can do things like remove the current row from it. You can move things around. You can trigger it to show more results if you've limited the results. You can search in that grid, those kind of things. What I'm doing here is I'm saying I want to move a certain row in relation to another row, and I want to move it after. So like I'm going to move this row to that row. And I'm doing it a little more complicated way here where I'm not using IDs, like I'm storing my own variables to like track this stuff. So I'm doing it a little more complicated than you may need to do it, but that's typical for me. This is one thing, by the way, I've gotten quite a few requests on, I think Drew has too, that we are going to make a video on like how to do drag and drop. We build everything in Bildr is built in such a way that you don't have to conform to like one mechanism. You can actually do pretty much any mechanism you want. But yeah, it's all built in. So you're using drag events, drop events, and then just running actions to tell it what you want to occur on drop. So for instance, you might not want it to just automatically move it, right? You might want it to like check something, and then if that thing is true, then pop a message. If it's false, go ahead and move it. So that's why we don't like make any assumptions about, well, you're just going to want to change the, order of it, because that may not be what you're wanting to do as an end result. So hopefully that pseudo answers your question, but we do need to produce a video around that particular thing. I'm happy to go over it with someone if you guys want to actually like build it in your project. I'm happy to help do that. Drew and I can both do it.
There was another question about workflow, like documentation on workflows. I don't really know the best answer because it's kind of what we've been talking about. We're kind of catching up with that stuff.
Yeah, so that question was from Tad. So Mark, actually, could we, in answering that question, like, yeah, we can answer the question on like what we're doing for tutorials, but I think we actually might need to take it a little, like, let's take it back a step to be a little bit more basic and beginner friendly. And maybe we just need to have a quick talk about what actions are, like, here's an element, these are the different events get triggered by end users, and then these are actions that you create action groups, that kind of thing, like super basic.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's let me find a better thing to look at that on rather than the, like, probably on this homepage would be a good spot to look. So on this homepage, I have a set of elements. So when you're adding elements, you're dragging and dropping those elements, or maybe duplicating them or copy pasting them from other pages. But in one way or another, you're creating elements on the page. And then elements on the page have several properties to them. So for one thing, you have like basic properties like the name of the element, things like that. Different elements will have different properties, like display text here, whereas on an image or something, it's not going to have display text, but it might have alt text and image source, right, where you're getting the image from. So each element will have its own set of properties. You can navigate the elements either inside the canvas, or on the left side, you can just click on things to move around and it'll select it on the canvas and also show you the detail on the right. And this is one big change from what's in production right now. So we're kind of like blending into the new UI stuff here because I'm actually demoing the new UI. So in your environment right now, when you click on this, it actually opens this detail on the left side and it's styled a little bit different. But the same functionality is there. It's just styling and moving things around that's changing in that regard. So the other thing that you have here is styling. Styling is based on CSS classes. So it's done in a traditional web development sense. So you have three types of styling. You have the primary style class, which gets overridden by any utility style classes that you apply, which all of that gets overridden by any inline styling. And this is just conforming to how CSS works. So really the best way to learn how that works is honestly just with like CSS courses online. If you understand CSS, you'll understand this hierarchy right off the bat. If not, you don't necessarily have to use all these things. Like a lot of people don't use the utility classes at all. They might just use primary styles, or they might even just do only inline styling. So for instance, if I go into a primary style, I can see what settings have been set. This is called our used properties view. It's this one here on the bottom. There's also an all properties view, which is more of a traditional GUI around it. So you can like go into spacing and see what's in there and make changes to it. You can also go into CSS view and actually just write CSS if you prefer that. So you have a lot of options for styling, and it's really in depth. It covers all the bases. So you have states like hover states. So for instance, on this one, when the user hovers over it, it changes the background color and the text color. And then this also has different device settings. So here on mobile landscape, it changes the background color changes the padding. And it looks like that's all it changes. So you can see by the little icon here that when I'm in that mode, it's changing that. So you can do responsive using that setup. And then there's events, which are when the user interacts with a thing on the page, that's where it's going to run the actions. So that's where we get into the flows. So in this case, when they click on the login button, that's going to do these two things. I'm opening a page, which in this case is the website login page, which is this one. And I'm opening it into a specific container on this page, and then I'm showing that container. So if I look at here, when I click that, it opens that page into the container and shows the container. And then the container has its own styling that's doing this blur effect and doing the different colors and things. So let's see.
Awesome, that's great. So that's like Bildr basics. You've got your elements, then you've got events that are different for each element. So for a button, somebody clicks, and then you create an action group with actions in it that basically tell the system what you want to happen.
Exactly. So it's pretty open-ended. Like you can really make it do anything you want.
So it looks like we've got a couple of questions and then a suggestion by Jeremy.
Sure.
Let's actually take a look at Dennis's first. So he's asking, can you preview responsiveness directly in the editor? For example, if you have a different margin on mobile. So we can just show them our little trick that we use to be able to see responsiveness.
Yeah, so we've gone back and forth with this many times. The problem with actual previews inside of a studio like this, inside of any editor, is that you have to fake it. And we don't think that's the right approach, because when you fake it, there's always going to be some edge case where it's quite a bit different. So when you click preview here, that actually opens the real application actually running. Okay, so it's actually, this is the actual thing running in a browser. It's not faked. Now you can just change the size here and you'll see it do that. That's using the responsive. So typically what I'll have is I either have a separate tab open, or if I'm on my big screen, I'll have like literally the two windows side by side. And the nice thing about this is if I'm in here and I make a change to this, it's going to live update this view here. So you can also do, you can open the developer tools on Chrome. It's also in all the other browsers as well. There's some form of developer tools. If you open that, there's this icon, or there'll be something similar where you can actually change it to a specific device. This is going to do a much better job of faking that like mobile device size. But honestly, what I do is I just have my phone like on a little stand right here next to me, and I have the live view open all the time on my phone. So when I'm designing, I'll have the studio open plus another tab open for the web view of it, or the browser on a PC. And then I also have my phone open to that preview page, the same preview link. So you can just share this preview link with anyone and they get access to view whatever that is. So I'll actually watch it in real time. And it's actually much more efficient that way. There are also some browsers that do it. I'm trying to remember the name of, there's a really good one I wanted to try out.
One.
What's that?
Blisk, Blisk. I think that's one. And they show you the phone side by side with the desktop in one view in the browser, and all updates. Like when you scroll they both scroll, that kind of thing.
Nice.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I
I would
Sorry, go
suggest
ahead.
that you do it that way because that you do it in a real setting like that, because there's always edge cases that you're just not going to see when you're trying to fake it in the browser. Like even if you go into Webflow, like their in studio preview is not always accurate to what's going to be actually displayed. So even if you're like in Webflow, I would suggest you like have it separate, hit the button and go look at it every time. Let's see.
Yeah,
So there was,
hopefully that answers that.
oh, and Jeremy said
It looks like
Sizzy is a good option
Sizzy.
for it as well.
So real
Nice.
quick, I don't want to gloss over this because like we worked really hard on this. And I think this is actually a big differentiator with a lot of other tools is you don't have to save your changes. Everything that you do just saves. So you don't have to save and refresh or do any of that. So what Mark was talking about is something that we created called resonance, and that's what does real time updating. So on your preview, if you've got that open, if you change a color here, it immediately changes it there. Same thing, if you change text, you can immediately see what it does. So I do think that is a really cool thing, and I just wanted to take a minute to shout out to the team who made that happen.
And then
Okay, so, and you
Drew,
guys can also set that up as well with Resonance Data Listener. So I'm sure we'll end up talking about that at some point. What was your question, Mark?
Drew, did you want to talk about Algolia? Because I don't really know too much about Algolia. I mean, I'm assuming you can integrate it in some way, but do you know much about it?
I don't actually know that much about Algolia specifically, but the answer to this question for Algolia or really anything else is that you can integrate any REST API. I haven't hit one anyway yet that I can't integrate. And you can also bring in like node libraries directly, like through like a server action, or you can actually just like manually import any JS library if you have the URL, like you would do in a page header normally. So there's like a number of ways to get the original libraries that you're talking about in, or to get the data in if you can do the REST API. And then once that stuff's in Bildr, you have access to like the JavaScript of everything basically, or at least JSON to control everything. So one way or another, I would say there's definitely a way to get that in there. And depending on the quirks of that specific service and what you're trying to do specifically, you might have to do it different ways or mixed methods. But you know, so far, I don't think literally I found anything I can't integrate yet.
Yeah, we can look further into Algolia, but I'm assuming, is there a node package for Algolia? Do you know? Anybody know that?
I don't know specifically, but
Who was it that asked that? Was it
there's
Indrik?
Instant Search JS they have, which if you can import that into a website, you can import it into Bildr.
Yeah, that's because that's just client-side JavaScript stuff, right?
Seems like
Yeah,
it
so
anyway. Yeah, I don't know the details.
yeah, but Indrik, if you can use a node package or or any JavaScript in the browser, you can bring it into Bildr. The easiest way to bring external package of JavaScript into Bildr in your project is actually just to make a page header, and you can literally do any tags you want here. So you can do like script and then whatever it is, and it'll go get it. So you can bring anything you want, and then you can reference that in any custom JavaScript you build into Bildr as well. So if you build a set of actions or a set of JavaScript functions, you have access to all the functions that are in your project as well. So if you can dive as deep as you want into the front end code of Bildr. So yeah. So for undo redo changes, we are working on like a actual undo redo buttons. In the meantime, what you can do, obviously the normal, like, you know, if I make a change here and I do Command Z, it's gonna do that. Command Shift Z, Command Z, that kind of thing. That's gonna work in any input as you're typing, and even right after it'll undo it. That's just the browser doing this normal undo redo. We don't have undo of like if I delete this element or something like that, but you can always show deleted and hide deleted for pages and elements, and you can undelete anything you want. So if you delete something, you can always, you know, come back and fix that. We are working on a full, and I think somebody's waiting to get in. We are working on a full undo redo, but we're doing it quite a bit different. We already track all the history of every change you make. So anything you make in there, any change you make, we actually know the whole history of every change. It's stored with your project. And so every time you make a change, it's stored as a historical point. That historical point can be referenced at any time you want. So really what we want to do is something much more robust than just a regular undo redo. We want to be able to say, like, for this element, I want to go back to what it was a week ago, or for this page, I want to go back to what it was a week ago. For save points, you don't really need them in Builder because everything is auto saving. But the way you could do it, and I do this sometimes, we have these, oops, let me close that. We have these things called deployments. So when you are building, you're building in your development deployment, and it's automatically just saving to that development deployment. When you're ready, you click publish, move the Zoom chat, and you publish from a deployment to another deployment. So you're typically going to go like from development to test, and then from test to production, or when you're working and there's no one else in it, like right now, because no one else uses Founder Update except for me, I'll typically go straight from development to production. But if you ever wanted to make a save point and you just wanted to like have it as it is at that moment, you could always just publish straight to your test environment and just keep that there, and then you can revert back to that. You could also go to deployments and just make a new deployment and call it, whatever you want, save point or whatever, and just publish to that save point anytime you want to. And that's always going to create like a static thing of that moment in time, whatever you do there.
And
Then,
so I could see that helpful, like if you're like working on something and you've got it to a good spot and you're about to start something new that might break a lot of stuff, publish that to like the test deployment or create a new deployment, name it whatever you want, publish to that. And then if you ever need to revert it back, like you can publish from that save point back into your development environment, and then it'll basically take you back to the way that was before. So that's just a little shortcut that you'd be able to use.
and then one other thing I'd say on that too, like if I was going to say I was wanting to make a new version of my app page, but I've already got all these actions and things in here that it all works. So before I start on that, what I might do is actually just duplicate this page. So if you click on this, you can just duplicate the page. And when you duplicate it, it duplicates it with all the elements, all the styling, all the actions, everything gets duplicated onto this next page. And then typically what I'll do is just work in the new page, like on the duplicated page until I get it where I want it. And I'll set it to, instead of being like, /app or whatever it is, I'll set it to like /app2. And then that way I can go test it there. And when I get it ready, then I'm just basically changing the pointer for the route of /app or whatever it is to go to my new thing. And I'm like always having both available. I'm never like in a position where I can't easily roll back to that without having other problems or something. There's no limit to like the number of pages or anything you can put in here, or the number of elements or actions. So I do that quite a bit actually. In Builder, me and Drew and Dorian, who's not on the call today, we all do that quite a bit. Yeah, it's similar to Git, but it's not really swapping. So it's like, and sorry, the question, just so everybody knows, in the Jeremy asked, so your deployments could be used similar to a Git release. It's similar to that, but in Git, I believe you swap, right? So we're not doing any swaps. It's like when you publish to it, it's literally making a copy of the entire configuration of your app from wherever you're going from, making a new one, and then changing the pointer of the deployment to go to that new one at the very end of it. So it is like a hot release though, because it's, the old one is just going to be there until that pointer changes. So there's no like downtime or anything like that. Let's see, next question from Lance was, how easy is it to have different data sources in each deployment type? Development with dev data, UAT with more realistic data sets, et cetera. So we actually already have the data underneath built for that, but we don't have a UI around it, unfortunately. It's on the roadmap for this year though. So basically, when you're doing the publish, it's a little more in depth than just like having some for dev, some for test, some for production, because there are certain things that you're going to want to push along the path, and then other collections you don't want to push along. So like, lists, admin level lists and things like that, you might want to manage them in your development environment, and as part of the release, push that data along. So that's coming, but it's not in the UI just yet. So right now what we do is we manage it. We have like a status almost, or like a type to manage it. So we have data that's only available in this environment, data that's only available in that environment. And you can do smart filtering in there where you can like check what the URL is or whatever you want to say, okay, I'm in this environment. So now display that type versus that type. So there's workarounds for it if you want to do it now.
Cool.
Thanks, Lance.
All right, so I'm just trying to see, I think we answered everything so far. So does anyone have any other questions, or Mark? If we don't have any other questions, we could kind of go through some of the UI changes just a little bit more in detail, like the new
Sure.
panel and then the things at the top.
Yeah. So there's 3 or 4 pretty significant user experience changes that we've been working on for the last 3 or 4 weeks. The most noticeable thing is that this panel over here on the left, or this column on the left, was buried in the menu. In the top left, there's a menu button, and that has a menu that drops down, then you have to click that and go through it to get to certain things. So we just made all of that accessible here instead. So that's really nice. I was actually surprised at how much nicer that is for me whenever I'm like wanting to go into my routes or something. I don't have to like click to get to it. It's just right there for me. So you just click on these and they'll pop open into a screen here, and you can just see whatever it is there. Another change that's decently significant is, rather than the plus symbol where you click that and it pops open this screen that kind of overtakes, we're now breaking it into pages, elements, blocks, and patterns here. And these are just always there. So if you click pages, you obviously have like the blank page basic thing, but you also have other template pages that we're adding to. So right now, whenever we release this time, there'll be at least these 2, possibly another one. But there's the landing page with a wait list, so you can just drag and drop it on. You can also drag and drop a SaaS marketing homepage that Drew actually made both of these. They're both really nice boilerplate starting points. And they're really great too, because you can see what happens. Like you can go dive into the CSS or into the styling or into the actions and just kind of see how it all works from these fully built out examples. And then elements, same kind of thing. We're actually going to go back to something we had before. These are not, obviously, we're not through putting them all in here for this new release, but we're actually going to go back to having even more. We used to have quite a bit more by default, and we're going back to that for this release. So in the release, you'll have like elements right now in your environment. You'll have like an input element. You drop that on, and there's different types where you can select the type, and it'll change it from like an email to a password to a text to a number. Instead of that, we're going to go back to what we had before, where you have like drag and drop a number field, drag and drop a text field, and you'll still have the types. You can switch it out. If you change it to something else, you can do that. And then blocks is something that's going to be new in this release. So this is really nice because we can quickly add and easily add things to this list for things that are just commonly used, like hero sections and columns and things like that. And then patterns is the same as it is right now. We did add a button here for pattern library. So if you've created the new patterns in your projects, you'll have access to any patterns you've created there. And then you'll also have access to the patterns that we're curating up. And this list will just grow. But patterns, we're getting confused because really a lot of those patterns are just things like landing pages, you know? And so you don't really need to go through a whole pattern process just to get a landing page. You can just drag and drop that straight on now. And Jeremy, in terms of the new UI, we're hoping to get it into test early next week, which will mean we usually have about a week gap before we get it to production, barring any significant issues. I would expect not the beginning of next week, but the week after that would be my expectation right now. We'll see if, you know how it goes though with software dev. It could be longer depending on what we find. But it's coming. And then the other big changes are the left panel and right panel. Like this is probably the most significant change to the UI. And so far, everyone that's actually gotten to use this, we do have some early users who have access to our test environment. So far, everyone who's had access to use this likes it way better. So I'm glad we started making these changes. Some things that are significant here, you can hover over and perform the element level actions. So you can like copy here, and I'm not going to do it because this is an actual project, but you can like paste directly here. You can duplicate from here. It just makes it really easy to quickly add things to your pages.
Without having to go select that element.
Right, like you don't even have to
change what
click on
you're-
it, right? Yeah, you can just like, I'm going to copy this and then I'm going to paste it over here, you know. And then the other big change is that the action groups are here. So you toggle the elements in the action groups list on the left here, and then you click on one to open it in the right. So
Yeah,
that's
return.
it's probably the main big change. Good to hear, Robert. Oh, thanks, Richard. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, I think this is the most intuitive version of the studio we've had yet. I'm actually pretty averse to change. Anytime the guys are like working on something and they totally like change it, I'm like, no, I have to learn this new thing. I really struggle with that. But the first time that I saw this and started working with this, like it just clicked. It was awesome. So I'm really excited. Hopefully you guys will think the same. We've reduced a lot of the clicks for you to be able to edit things. So Mark, do you just want to show like, because just the selecting, even just on itself is really different.
What do you mean?
So if like, if you just click on an element on the left panel, how it'll take you into the styling, right? Like into the element properties.
Yeah, I was in properties last time. So it remembers what you were in last time. So like if you're in events and you click on something else, it's going to keep you in events on there. If you haven't selected anything, it'll default to styling. Styling will actually be the next big UX change that we make. It won't be in this release, but in the subsequent release, because this is also just too many clicks to get around. And Peter, in terms of actions on right click, do you mean like in the studio where you would right click on something, or do you mean like when one of your users clicks on something in your project to do a right click in the studio? Yeah, so I guess, yeah, so we can definitely do right click menus anywhere, because since we use Bildr to build Bildr, it's really just exactly what you have access to, and you can do your own right click. I can't remember what it's called in there. Context menu is actually what it's called in the browser. So right click and you can run whatever you want. So you can run an action, so show a menu or whatever it is. And we have gone back and forth about doing a right click. So like right click on this and take over the context menu. So instead of showing the browser menu, show like a full menu of things. I actually played around in this last release. There was a couple of days where you could click this and it would actually give you a full menu here, like underneath it. So we can do all those things. And this is exactly what we want to hear from you guys, is like, what else would help from going from A to B, right? And then from skipping from A to G, you know what I mean? Like, how do we get you from here to there faster? So, but yeah, context menus, right click menus is something we're looking at. The other thing that we're looking at too is when you're in here, it was hard to get the UX right. I actually tried it in this last round. I was trying to figure out how to make it simple and clean to use. And I couldn't get it quite right, so I pulled it. But there's no reason we can't also give you context menus right around the element in the canvas, so you don't even have to come over here. But I couldn't make it feel right. So we might come back to those things. It might be in a right click menu, for instance. But I don't want to bury it too much, because I also want to make it work on like an iPad, right? So this all work, you can do all this on an iPad. And so because of the lack of a right click, we don't want to make, well, I want to make sure that it's not buried inside of there. But yeah, we'll continually iterate on this, Peter. So, you know, any feedback you all have, we want to hear it for sure.
Yeah, I'll be super curious when y'all get the new UI, if the need for right clicks is just as strong with this new setup, just because it's a bit faster. I am wondering like what people prefer, if it's like the right click or there's also like keyboard shortcuts. And I know we've talked about like that, like creating a shortcut to just add a container wherever you are, things like that. So yeah, I'd be super curious if anyone is interested in that. And then it looks like Jay has some feedback. I'll see you later, Dennis. Thanks for joining. Right click or keyboard shortcuts. They want both options.
Everybody wants all of them. That's cool. That's my answer always too. It's like, should we do this or this? We should do both. That's what we should do.
All right, awesome. So it looks like we're coming up on 12. Was there any last questions that you guys wanted to chat about before we wrap? Mark?
I wanted to show the one other major thing, which is this little question mark here. So there's a couple of things. Let me see. So when you drop, I can't do it because I'm actually in a real project, but when you drop something like a landing page or certain elements like the grid or the component element, we're actually going to be popping open tutorials that show you, so like that'll actually allow you, they prompt you. You don't have to go through the tutorial, but it'll prompt you to say, like, do you want to go through this tutorial to explain to you what that is and how it works. So that'll also be happening for the actions. So on specific action types, you can click here and just see all the options of how it works. So we'll walk you through it. And then you can also go to the question mark anytime you want and see all of the Bildr lessons that we have updated already. So this will give you access to anything that we've created. You can just click on it. You can view it in Studio. You can open it up and go out of it. You can minimize it and do some work, come back into it and continue your work. And these are stepped. So this one only has one step. But what you'll end up having is like, you'll have 4 steps in a process. So you'll go and read step 1 or watch a video on step 1. You can just collapse this, do step 1. Then when you're done with that, go back in, go to step 2 and so forth. So we're trying to build in studio learning as opposed to like taking you totally out of context. It's a really difficult UX problem. Didn't realize how complicated that UX would be to get right. And we'll see if we got it right on this release, but it's getting close. Yeah, Jeremy, so that library is being built right now. So this question mark right here is going to be how you do that. And we're just not quite there yet with releasing it. But when it comes out, you'll have that and you'll have access to all of these in one place. And the nice thing too is these lessons, we'll be able to continue to add to these lessons without releases and without anything like that. So it's a totally dynamic learning system. So I'm excited to get this out there. Let's see, there was one other thing too that they asked about.
I think Robert was asking about auto centering elements, which we're very opinionated.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, so Robert, for auto centering elements, so we don't do any auto anything really, and we do that intentionally because with styling, it's about piggybacking on top of CSS. So there are a bunch of different ways to center things with CSS, and this is just going to basically take learning how these things operate. Honestly, it's just how it goes when you're having to learn things like that. But the way to do it, there's properties like text align, which allow you to center, and you can find those inside of the all properties. Oh, you meant in the editor. What do you mean by that? And you can unmute too if it's easier.
Yeah, the environment that I'm familiar with is Bubble, and they have, if you've got an element in there, you can just right click on it and it has vertical centering and horizontal centering, so you don't have to figure out how to move, how many pips to move it over and stuff like that. And I was just fooling around with my project here and just trying to get it, and I couldn't figure out how to do that.
Yeah, so the unfortunate thing is that the reason Bubble is able to do that is because they use absolute positioning for everything. So they're limiting you on what can and cannot be done. That's why it makes it so difficult to do things like responsive in there, because they're basically putting a very opinionated stack on top of CSS. And we've intentionally gone the other way. We're saying we're not going to put any opinion on it because you can never have all the edge cases handled. It's like it gives you, it's a double-edged sword both ways, right? Like in the one way, it makes it much easier to do something like center it. But in the other way, it makes it way more difficult to go and, get to an end result that is exactly like what you want it to be, right? That you hit these limits consistently with that styling. In Bildr, it's basically piggybacking on CSS. So there's going to be several methods for doing that. So for instance, like in typography, on this, and I actually don't ever use this view, so I'm gonna have to find it. Yeah, it's called text align. So there's different options for that. Now we're building out all the options so that you just select from them. And we may end up putting better UIs around certain things. But the problem is, like, if you're centering text align will work for you. You do left, center, or right. But if you're centering like an entire group of elements, text align does nothing to that, because that's just not how CSS works, right? And so you might, depending on what you're doing, you might use like Flexbox, or you might use grid, or you might use something totally different. You might just use like you can use margin auto left on the left and the right of margin, and that will make it center in the middle. So unfortunately, it's just something where it's like, it's not an easy answer because it depends, right? That's sort of the answer as well. It depends on what you're trying to do. But there are only like 4 or 5 methods. So I think centering in particular is something that we should write up a how-to, and here are the 4 or 5 contexts that it matters in. And then once you know those 4 or 5, that's really all you need to know. Because I only used Flexbox and text align for like 99% of my centering. And then every once in a while, I'll use margin, left and right auto. But that's it. I don't even mess with any other methods. I'm sure there's 100 other ways to do it in CSS, but I don't need them. So I just don't care about them really.
What about just in the
That's a great idea.
editor, if you wanted to put a group inside of a group, and the group inside was significantly smaller, and you just wanted to center it inside of the bigger group, how do you do that?
Yeah, so for instance, like that's what this is here. And I know it's hard to see that this is like a grid inside of there because I actually have it hidden by default. Like I have it set to not display until it loads. But inside of here, I have this content thing. And I actually have a whole bunch of classes that I've applied to this. And one of those is this one that's called Flex Start Center. And I'm using Flex to do the centering here. It's aligning that content to the middle, in this case, to the center. Okay. But I'm just using Flex to do it. And that's kind of what I'm saying is like, if it would depend, like Drew, I bet would not have done it like this. I bet he would have used margin auto left, right for this, I might be wrong, Drew, but that, like different people will do it in different ways depending on, and it also depends on the context of it. So unfortunately, even for something like that, it's not as simple as like, it depends on what you're putting in there, right? So sometimes the content inside of your grid is centered like that. Sometimes it's a list of rows that are going to wrap. So it's like 1, 2, 3, and then wrap 4, 5, 6, wrap 5, or wrap 7 or whatever. And that you may not want it centered. Actually, you want to like put a container around it, center the container, and then you want the little cards in the middle to not center, right? So in that case, it would be something different. You'd put the container around it, and then you'd center the container and not center the actual grid rows inside. So unfortunately, there are, just variables to it. But I do think it's actually only like 4 or 5 things. So it's probably a good place, because I do get that question a good bit of like, how do I center text, or and it's usually from people who've come from Bubble or people who don't have understanding of CSS just yet, right? So one of my goals is to actually create an environment that teaches you how to do it that way, because these skills transfer to everything too. Like if you learn how to do it in Bildr, that would transfer to any other environment that uses CSS. Like it would transfer to Webflow, it would transfer to just writing CSS if you wanted to. And I have a feeling that more and more of the platforms will end up just piggybacking on top of it. On top of CSS, I mean.
So I'll make a list here to create a lesson where we kind of cover like how to auto center things, maybe for like 5 commonly used scenarios. And I think just a little bit more education around that might be helpful for our users. Awesome. So I'll make a note of that right now.
That's great. Yeah, and I can probably, I would think the top ones would be, how do I center text? Just I've got a text box and it's pushing to the left. How do I center it and how do I move it to the right? That would be one thing. And then I've got a, say I've got a like a section on my website, and I've got a section, and then I want the content to be centered in the middle because I don't want it to go the full width. I want the section to go the full width and be gray background, but I want the content to only go 900 pixels wide and be centered. Like that would be another common thing. And then probably the third one that would be the most common is actually what you just described, which is I've got a grid of rows and I want it to be centered in the middle, but I want the grid of rows itself. I don't want the content in there to like be squished and centered. I just want the content around it to not go the full width of the page and be centered in the middle, or maybe like nested inside of there centered. But those are probably the three most common, and I would bet every project I do those three things. So maybe we could just start with those.
Yeah, okay, cool. I noted all of that.
Cool.
And I'll make a task for it. Awesome.
Oh, man.
Were there any other, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I just love, I was just reading the comments. I love what Jay said there. Assign those tiny tutorials out to your early users. I like it. That's great.
I mean, that would be awesome if anyone had like something that maybe was a struggle point for them and they learned it and they wanted to like I would totally share that one.
Fantastic.
For sure.
Jay said he's down to do that one.
Yeah. Oh, that would be awesome. And then, yeah, if you guys have anything like that, that's like a pain point or something you're struggling learning, like, please let us know, because it gives us a chance to do something about it. And like, again, like we can fill out lessons for those things that are actually needed versus it's harder because we're like, when you're building something, you're so in it, you don't see it from like the perspective of an end user. And so like, for you guys telling us like what you're having a hard time with or what's ugly, what a pain point is tremendously helpful, because you're seeing it totally different than we are. And sometimes we're just like blinded to these things. So I really appreciate you guys letting us know. Yeah.
You get used to that extra click and then you forget it's there, you know?
I know. And I was like, yeah, with the new UI, I was like, how did we not, like, how come it wasn't this way from the beginning? But you just don't know what you don't know when you're in it. So yeah,
this is honestly, this is exactly why we want to do these builder hours. You know, part of it's to help you guys, but it's really actually selfish. We want to know where is the pain so that we can solve that pain with an upcoming release. And we really are listening. Like we're listening and iterating really fast on exactly what we hear from you guys. A big part of what was missing was this learning facility that we could easily add to the content. So that's why we put a focus on that this last round. So now as we do more of these and we get more feedback from you all, we can easily add these things for everyone. So I really appreciate, you know, Robert, thank you for pushing on those things. Like that's exactly what we want.
Yeah.
So
now I know like the priority for how to do auto centering and things like that is like something we need to educate more on, for sure. Awesome. Well, guys, it looks like we're heading a little bit over an hour, so we will go ahead and wrap. But if anyone has anything, chat us in the community or send us a support ticket if you want it to be direct. Thank you all so much for taking the time. And next one will be not the coming Friday, but the Friday after. So I hope to see you all there.
Awesome.
Have a wonderful weekend, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
See you soon.